Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. In tonight's video, we're going to be talking about Benjamin Netanyahu banning Yoav-Gallant from going to visit the United States before the potential attack. The visit of Pezeshkian with Vladimir Putin, the preparations of Iran, 10 plans of attack, and the destruction that Hezbollah caused in their most intense attack on Haifa yet in history. We haven't seen an attack with such intensity on Haifa, particularly from Hezbollah, even in the 2006 war. In the 2006 war, there was a lot of attacks going on from Hezbollah on Haifa. However, this attack that happened yesterday and today as well, they caused a lot of destruction, and Hezbollah are sending messages to Israel when it comes to these attacks. And the last one was, we can turn Haifa into Kiryat Shmone or Metullah, meaning that these areas that have most of their populations, the vast majority of their populations, away from them, with many of the properties completely destroyed, in many cases with hardly any interception from the Iron Dome, that can become Haifa if Israel continues to conduct attacks on Lebanon. And Hezbollah, they are also attacking central Israel. They're not only attacking Haifa. The attack that they conducted yesterday included central Israel, Galilot in particular. This area has been attacked several times now. The main hub for the Israeli intelligence community. Galilot includes the Mossad headquarters and Unit 8200 bases alongside the Military Intelligence Directorate bases. Hezbollah have attacked this place now multiple times, and again sending messages to Israel that they are not stopping up until they stop with the war, not only in Lebanon but in Gaza as well. Don't forget, we had these claims about a potential ceasefire coming to Lebanon before the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah. However, Hezbollah had tied that with Gaza. Why? Because Israel was hoping to separate the unity that's happening, because Hezbollah participated in Al-Aqsa flood for the sake of Gaza. However, Israel is trying to cut those ties. One of the main things that Israel is suffering from now is, of course, the attacks being conducted on Israel from outside of Gaza. The 7th of October happened. They could have got it dealt with as and when, because Hamas told them we're ready to negotiate and get a deal done. We can stop everything. They continue. They did not anticipate such level of participation from Lebanon and from Yemen and from Iraq and from Iran. I'm going to start off with the visit, the planned visit of Yoav-Gallant to the United States of America that was cancelled. Why? Well, they're saying postponed, but technically he's cancelled it now. Because Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want Yoav-Gallant to go and have talks with the US administration. Why? Because Benjamin Netanyahu wants to be at liberty to what? Attack the nuclear facilities in Iran. Reports are saying that the American administration, they don't want him to attack nuclear facilities. And Gallant was supposed to go there to coordinate this attack with Biden. Apparently, Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, firstly, I need Joe Biden to call me, because Joe Biden hasn't been speaking with Netanyahu lately. He only spoke with the president, Yitzhak Herzog of Israel. And he needs things coordinated with him. He doesn't want Yoav-Gallant to speak. So we have this article here on Ynet saying that Netanyahu issued an ultimatum just before taking off for the US and Gallant's trip was postponed. The Minister of Defense was supposed to fly to Washington tonight to tighten coordination with Iran and possibly also receive heavy armaments. But hours before that, the Prime Minister set two conditions: a conversation with Biden and approval by the cabinet of the operation in Iran. As a result, the trip was postponed and the Americans were shocked. Before the report, Gallant and Austin did not discuss the nuclear attack as an option. Gallant was supposed to take off tonight to a quick visit to Washington, the main purpose of which is to tighten coordination between Israel and the US in the shadow of preparations for an Israel response to the ballistic missile attack from Iran. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided to issue an ultimatum before the flight was approved. And in the United States, they announced as a result, Gallant will not arrive for the time being. This is not the first time that Benjamin Netanyahu does that. He likes to do things last minute as a show of control and to dictate what's been done. He previously banned the head of the Mossad from negotiating with the Qataris to release the Israelis in Gaza. And now he is dictating what Defense Minister Yoav-Gallant wants to do. That's, of course, alongside the so many attacks from Netanyahu on him and attacks from Gallant on him, feuds that they've had that led to threats at one point. Netanyahu set two conditions for Gallant's flight before the approval. One of them was a conversation that US President Joe Biden will have with Netanyahu after the two have not spoken for many weeks. For a long time now, Biden has been avoiding a conversation with the Prime Minister, and on the other hand, he has spoken with the country's President Yitzhak Herzog. The second condition was approval by the cabinet of the following actions against Iran. In fact, so far the government has not approved Gallant's trip, and as a result, the takeoff has been delayed. The Pentagon announced that Israel had informed them about the postponement of Gallant's arrival. We expect him to arrive at a later date, they said. Around Netanyahu, they said that Gallant's trip was not cancelled, but postponed. They noted that talks are taking place for a conversation between Netanyahu and Biden, and that this week the cabinet is expected to convene, which means that Gallant could take off within a few days. It is believed that Netanyahu is actually afraid of Biden giving credits to Gallant and wants to show his base in Likud that he is preventing Gallant from coordinating with the Americans. The Americans are in complete shock. And in fact, it's not just a crisis between Netanyahu and Gallant, but also between Netanyahu and the Biden administration. The Americans are the ones who invited the Minister of Defense, who for them is the contact person for the war. And he coordinated his trip with the Prime Minister's office. Until a few hours ago, even though permission for the trip had not been received, those around Gallant were sure that it would take place as planned. A spokesperson for the State Department, Matthew Miller, commented on the latest developments and said that the United States does not see this as a sign of Israel's final decision to attack Iran. Regarding the possibility of canceling or postponing the trip, he said, at the end of the day, decisions of cabinet members' trips to Washington are decisions of the Israeli government. They continued the main goal of Gallant's trip was to receive from the Americans what Israel is so thirsty for, a projection of power from the world's greatest power in the Middle East, which may prevent an Iranian response to the Israeli response, which is yet to come. Before Gallant's flight, which has now been cancelled, he was summoned, along with other ministers, to a security consultation in the Kiryat with the Prime Minister after yesterday was revealed on Ynet that he was not summoned to a similar discussion. NBC reported today from two American officials that Israel did not provide the United States with specific details regarding the response to the Iranian missile attack, even after senior American military officials publicly discussed the possibility of supporting the Israel response, including in intelligence. According to two senior officials in Gallant's conversation with Minister with the Minister of Defense Lloyd Austin, and the two discussed the potential response options, but not Israel's final decision. American officials said that they do not believe that Israel has yet made a final decision on how to proceed. They added here, Gallant and Austin did not discuss the nuclear attack as an option. And they continued with further more details, and we have reports that the United States is providing Israel with ultra-heavy GBU missiles so that they can attack Iran's mountains and their nuclear facilities. However, it wasn't coordinated when it comes to the nuclear attack. Netanyahu is most likely doing this as a show of strength and showing everyone who is boss. He had many problems when it comes to Yoav Gallant. However, with regards to the actual situation with the United States, Benjamin Netanyahu could also be doing this to put more pressure on the United States administration. Why? Because he wants to dictate how the attack is going to be carried out on Iran. Netanyahu views this as his main big opportunity to carry out a massive strike on Iran's nuclear program and potentially take the government down and have some sort of a regime change in Iran. These are Benjamin Netanyahu's hopes. However, it's very unlikely, especially with the level of support that the Iranian supreme leader is getting, and the government as well, and the heavy support publicly, not only in Iran, but globally, after Iran attacked this country that is committing war crimes and a genocide in a way that hasn't been seen before, which leads me to the second subject that I wanted to speak about. Iran, not only that they are supporting the resistance, they are also looking to make an alliance now with the regional states that support or house the resistance. So we had this article today on RT. Fortunately enough, we can still have access to RT in Arabic, and I can translate it for you in English, but we don't have access to the English website. Although, I mean, there are ways to reach it, but they make life difficult for you. Tasneem, quoting Tasneem, a news agency from Iran working on regional resistance pact. The Iranian Parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee is preparing a bill to conclude a resistance pact with a number of countries and liberation movements in the Middle East. The Tasneem news agency reported this on Monday, explaining that the treaty will stipulate providing mutual military, political, and economic support in the event that one of the parties to the treaty is attacked by the United States or Israel. According to Tasneem, the agreement includes the establishment of an operations headquarters to coordinate military operations and conduct training. It is proposed to assign the task of dividing responsibilities and implementing the plan to the Iranian Supreme National Security Council. According to the bill, Iran's Security Council will consider requests to join the resistance pact. The agency explained that the agreement aims to provide mutual assistance in times of crisis and create a unified military infrastructure to confront threats from Israel and Western countries. After the completion of the draft document, it will be submitted to the Iranian parliament. The agency's report comes on the first anniversary of Hamas's launch of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, which led to a violent response by Israel, launching a large-scale attack on Gaza that killed and injured tens of thousands of Palestinians, and amid an escalation of the Israeli attack on Lebanon's Hezbollah, Iran's closest ally in the region. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said during last Friday's sermon that the enemy of the Iranian people is the same enemy of the Iraqi nation, the same enemy of the Lebanese nation, the same enemy of the Egyptian nation, the same enemy of all of us, and Muslims today should no longer be neglected. He called for tightening the belt of defense and independence in all Islamic countries from Afghanistan to Yemen, warning that if the enemy rests in one country, it will head to another. Nations should not allow this. If the enemy attacks a country, all countries support that country. This is beyond Iran's support for the resistance movements, because they will be doing something with the country that's hosting them. That means you will have more coordination when it comes to the countries, more of a defense pact or defense agreement that officially states have together. Previously, Iran and Syria and Hezbollah had a similar agreement, but clearly things have changed now, and they're looking to expand this pact that they're having. This is coming simultaneously with reports that the Iranian president is due to visit Vladimir Putin, and we have the Iranian foreign minister Araghchi visiting Saudi Arabia. The visit to Saudi Arabia is just as important as the visit to Russia. Of course, when it comes to the visit of Russia, you're talking about a country that is, of course, supporting Iran. With Saudi Arabia, you're talking about a country that has had hostilities with Iran. However, the tensions were reduced after the Chinese mediated between Iran and Russia in 2023 with Omani mediation as well. This report also came on Tasneem, speaking to reporters on the sidelines of a conference on the anniversary of Al-Aqsa storm operation held in Tehran on Tuesday. Araghchi said he presses on with consultations with foreigners on the regional developments, pointing to his diplomatic efforts to end the Gaza war during his recent visit to New York for the UN General Assembly and the subsequent trips to Doha, Beirut, and Damascus. Araghchi said he is going to proceed with the visits this evening. The top Iranian diplomat unveiled plans to visit Saudi Arabia and other regional countries. We are trying to take measures to stop the Israeli crimes, reaffirming Iran's policy of supporting the resistance forces and its efforts to condemn and end the Zionist regime's atrocities. Araghchi reiterated that Iran does not seek war, nor does it fear it. Asked about the Israeli regime's rhetoric of military action against Iran, the foreign minister said Tehran is prepared for every scenario and has identified all necessary targets in the occupied territories. Our policy is to cease clashes and to achieve a ceasefire acceptable to and agreed on by the resistance, the top diplomat said. In Gaza, at least 41,909 Palestinian people have been killed and 97,303 wounded in Israeli strikes since October 2023. So we clearly have intense diplomatic action coming from Iran, alongside its massive preparations when it comes to the Israeli response. And when it comes to the Israeli response on Iran, we had another revelation that Iran has 10 plans to attack Israel. Not one, not two, but 10. They did not elaborate on these 10 plans when it comes to responding to Israel. However, we know that Iran has more than one option, but any of these options will be more severe than the previous one. So we had this report as well in Tasneem. Iran has at least 10 scenarios for tough responses to Israel. The military sources confirmed to Tasneem that the design and arrangement units at the Iranian armed forces have drawn up at least 10 appropriate scenarios for responding to the Zionist regime's possible action, saying any of those plans could be employed when necessary. Those scenarios are updatable, and their preparation indicates Iran's seriousness about showing a response to a hostile move. The source added, Iran's response will not be necessarily reciprocation at the same level of the Israelis' action, but it may be harsher and aim for different targets that would intensify the effectiveness of the response, the military sources said. The sources also noted that the territories occupied by the Zionist regime are much smaller than Iran's area, and Israel has more sensitive and fewer infrastructures, so that Iran's retaliation could inflict unprecedented troubles on the Israeli regime. Many countries have declared that they will have no participation in favor of Israel, the sources added, warning that any country that would assist the Zionists in a possible action will have crossed Iran's red lines and will suffer damages. On October 1st, Iran responded to the Israeli assassination of Hamas political bureau chief Ismail Haniyeh, Hezbollah Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and IRGC General Abbas Nilfurushan by launching as many as 200 ballistic missiles toward the Zionist regime's military and intelligence bases all over the occupied Palestinian territories. While the Zionist regime has threatened to retaliate, Iranian officials have warned that Tehran's reciprocal response to any Israeli action will be harsh, proportional, and well calculated. When it comes to this report coming from Iran, it's not the first one, of course, but they previously said that if Israel responds to their attack on the 1st of October, that they will respond violently, hinting that they weren't violent in the previous report. We had elaboration in the previous attack, We had other elaborations from IRGC officials saying that if they do attack them, if Israel attacks them, then he said, we will respond by destroying their infrastructure. And destroying infrastructure in Israel is very serious. Like they said here, Israel is a very small state, and they cannot handle such a massive blow. That is assuming the United States, again, will allow Israel to conduct a large-scale operation in Iran. Don't forget, in April, after the historical attack from Iran on Israel, there was a small action in the northeastern part of Iran, something resembling fireworks, and Israel did not take responsibility to that. And from an Iranian perspective, it was considered a done deal. Israel did not, announce anything, so they did not have to respond. However, Israel needs the United States very much when it comes to this attack. There are many problems coming with the logistics of this attack. One of them, for example, if a fleet of Israeli fighter jets go to Iran and manage to reach there, mind you, they might have surprises on the way. And we have a simultaneous attack from Hezbollah and from Iran and maybe another front to all Israeli military bases. So the fighter jets that went there don't have a place to come back to and land. What are they going to do? Are they going to land in another territory? If they do, will Iran consider that territory an enemy assisting location? Are they going to land on the US aircraft carriers? If they do, will Iran consider those aircraft carriers as legitimate targets too? And with regards to the level, talking about a large attack. Well, if they struggle to go and attack in Yemen that doesn't have advanced anti-air defense systems, and they went through the coast, they didn't have to go through countries and what have you, they only went through the Red Sea. They said that we were surprised that we didn't lose any fighter jet. How are they going to conduct such an operation in Iran when Iran has S-300s? They have their own anti-air defense, anti-aircraft systems, Pavar 373, and there are reports that they have the S-400 and some of the most advanced radar systems coming from Russia. What are they going to do with that? What do you think is going to be a walk in the park? It isn't going to be a walk in the park, and they need heavy involvement from the United States. And the US is potentially considering that. However, when it comes to the United States, they have allowed all of this to happen. If not, Israel is acting on behalf of the US when it comes to all of this so that they can implement their plan for a new Middle East and have full hegemony in the Middle East, get rid of any potential competition and challenges so that they can focus on their bigger adversaries, China and Russia. Which leads me to the last thing that I want to talk to you about. Today we had the biggest attack from Hezbollah on Haifa. And this was part of the damage in Haifa. This was one building in an area called Kiryat Yam. In Haifa, as you can see, Hezbollah are now targeting also civilian areas in Haifa, and they launched over 100 missiles on the city, with several of them landing. There were interceptions seen, but there was a lot of destruction when it comes to the missiles from Hezbollah. Israel said that 12 people were wounded, civilians, but when it comes to the actual numbers, they could be, of course, hiding. And it was the biggest attack that has ever happened by missiles on Haifa, with missiles that are heavier than the previous missiles that they used. And again, Hezbollah then warned them. They said that we will make Haifa, if you continue, we will make Haifa the new Kiryat Shmone and the new Metullah, meaning they have showered these locations with thousands now, many hundreds, if not thousands, of missiles, and they have the capacity to conduct such attacks on Israel. This raises another question. How comes Hezbollah still has the capacity to attack longer range missiles, a city like Haifa, and put a further several 100,000 people in bunkers and in shelters? How are they able to conduct that? And how are they able to conduct that with the recent assassinations of their senior figures? And one thing we need to remember here, firstly, if the attacks of Israel, backed by the US, on Gaza and on Lebanon happened to any country, almost any country in the world, they would have raised the white flag. They would have submitted. Japan submitted and gave up after attacks that are nowhere near, even with the nukes based on their size and the level of population, on the attacks that happened in Gaza and in Lebanon. Although in Lebanon we are seeing visibly heavy losses from the Secretary General and from the first line of commanders. What does that tell you? That tells you that these people don't give up. You're talking about people who are built differently. They don't give up, and they have the capacity to continue fighting Israel without a centralized command system in place. So all of their units, for example, Hezbollah, Badr, Aziz, and their other unit, they can continue and fight Israel within their territories without having to speak with anyone. And they have had these plans from a very long time ago. So it's clear that in the case of Hezbollah, not only have they prepared for this battle, they have prepared for a bigger battle. They have prepared for bigger losses. That's why they are still able to be so effective in their resistance to Zionist aggression and occupation, or attempts of invasion and occupation of their territories. And Israel is now saying they're deploying several more brigades to Lebanon. I'm not sure why, because they already have 3 divisions up there. Reports of at least 40,000 troops. It's most likely more than that. What are they there for exactly? Well, firstly, clearly Israel is planning for something. Secondly, a part of it is really just a show, because they haven't been able to infiltrate hardly anywhere really in Lebanon. We might have cases of potential further invasion in Lebanon as a tactic coming from Hezbollah to lure them into certain locations so that they can trap them into certain ambushes, as we've seen in 2006 in Wadi Hijr and in what was labeled as the Merkava massacre. Days they allowed Israel to go in. Israel was planning to go to the Litani River, and then they were destroyed in these areas. Again, Question: how are they still able to do that with Israel targeting the senior figures? And what is the assassination of the senior figures of Hezbollah, from Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah himself to the first line? And now they're saying, you know, we're targeting some of the people who replaced them. Benjamin Netanyahu claimed, although we have no proof, that they targeted the people who replaced them. What does that mean? That means that what Israel is doing is nothing more than bloodlust and blood trophies for a sociopathic, bloodthirsty nation, to show them, okay, here's blood, here's more heads, here's more people dying. Nothing else. Because if you want to compare what you're doing to your objectives, they contradict and go against your objectives. The campaign of Israel in Lebanon was intended to return the people safely back to the north. This is putting more Israelis at risk. It's not returning people to the north. It's expelling more people to the south. It's expelling more people for good outside of the state of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is doing this as a show to tell people, look, I got Nasrallah. Look, I got this. Look, I got this. And at the same time, they're putting more people in the range of fire, because Israel, although they had this infiltration at a senior level, they haven't had an infiltration when it comes to the people who are fighting them in the resistance. And the missiles. How can Hezbollah in broad daylight launch 100 or over 100 missiles that are longer range than their Katyushas, for example, on a city like Haifa, if Israel is roaming around in Lebanon and is supported with the highest, most advanced satellite support from the US, from the UK, from other countries too? How are they able to conduct that? Clearly, that is a success coming from the resistance and a failure coming from Israel. So where Israel can boast about having this limited success when it comes to assassinating certain figures, if you want to compare that to their objectives, which is how you should compare them when you talk about a military operation or even a political ambition or a political will, they failed. Why? Because you can't say that this is my aim and I'm going to kill the head and that will get me my aim. It's not happening. It hasn't happened before. And it doesn't seem like it will happen in the future. What everyone needs to be focusing on, and that's why they try and hide it so much, is what's happening on the ground. And on the ground, the Israelis are being humiliated and defeated, not only in Gaza, but in Lebanon. And they are being attacked with more strategic and longer range missiles, and they have no answer for these missiles, and they cannot stop these missiles. Like Hagari, the IDF military spokesperson, he had a press conference about an hour ago, and one of the reporters in Israel, one of the journalists, asked him, 1 year on, where are we going? Hamas just had a strike on central Tel Aviv. And the excuse was, we defeated their capability to conduct another 7th of October attack, but we're still engaging in guerrilla warfare. Say it as it is. 1 year on, we failed to reach our objective. They always twist the words and try and play around with everything when we see the evidence coming from the ground. And like this grave failure in Gaza, they are facing a bigger failure in Lebanon. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you, and I'll open the space up for your participation. If anyone has any comments for me, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them so that we could reach them quickly. I'll try and take as much as possible with our limited time, of course. And again, thank you so much for everyone who is tuning in. The Sweeney, Stephen Burrows, and Dennis Huggins, thank you so much for your participation. Dennis Huggins, you said that the US wants to attack Iran with, excuse me, sorry, I have to go ahead to your question here. He said, too much leaked info to be true. US wants to attack Iran nuke facilities, but want no blame. Well, listen, Israel is the United States and the United States is Israel. Lobby, infiltration, interests, we don't really care about that because the United States is supporting them with everything that they need, now including boots on ground and deployment of forces and deployment of equipment and sending their aircraft carriers and putting their own population's lives at risk for the sake of a genocidal war criminal whose son is in the United States himself, bathing in Miami. So yes, the United States wants to reduce the power of Iran in the region. Israel is the side that they would do it through. Israel was the barking mad dog on Iran for a very long time. That was for the sake of United States and their games against Iran. Because don't forget, getting rid of Iran or waging a war on Iran was part of the plan for the new Middle East of the United States following the invasion of Iraq and in Afghanistan. But it seems like the curse of their heinous crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq and the blood of the millions of people that they slaughtered in these countries is coming back to haunt them now, with more people in the region and more countries and movements rising up against them and putting them in a very difficult position. Not to say that they don't have the capacity to go and to conduct an operation, or they can, but they will be putting themselves in a very weak position. The United States still has many bases in the region, and they don't necessarily want to put all of them at risk, saying that they are supporting a sociopathic, genocidal maniac running a supremacist apartheid state, behaving recklessly and spreading terror in the Middle East. So what are they expecting exactly? And clearly, you know, these countries, they don't really change way unless they're met with force, unless they were met with resistance. Ozo the Great, thank you. Very interesting comment. That's what I always say. And Gullyberg, Mahmoud, the intense rocket barrage from resistance yesterday and today, is it possible that they are draining the Iron Dome before something big? Well, the question of draining the Iron Dome or not draining the Iron Dome is something that is really ongoing. It's not necessarily something that would happen before an all-out attack. Hezbollah has done that previously when they wanted to reach certain locations. They look at their strategy when it comes to attack Israel, considering Iron Dome interceptions. And I think if they want to carry out a large-scale attack on Israel, we would see consecutive attacks. Why? Because with the Iron Dome, what you need to consider is the time that it requires to reload the Iron Dome. So let's say Hezbollah attacked Israel a couple of hours ago. Israel used 20 missiles from the Iron Dome. Each battery has 20 missiles. And it takes them approximately an hour to refill them. Whatever the time is, I don't know exactly. But let's say that's the time. I mean, I'm sure the guys opposing Israel know probably times better than me. But assuming it's an hour, then during that hour, they will continue the attack. This is how it would work. So that's why if they want to conduct a massive attack, it will be an ongoing waves. So waves, a couple of minutes, another wave, a couple of minutes, another wave, another wave, another wave, etc. That's if they want to completely dismantle and disable Israel's defense systems completely, or, of course, resort to missiles that they have proven to not be able to intercept, like was the case with the hypersonic missiles coming from Iran, where more than 90% of them landed on Israel. And that was from Gullyberg. Thank you so much for that. Also, the Great saying, can Iran hit nuclear power plant Israel? Is that allowed? They can. In terms of is that allowed, you see, that's the thing here. Israel and the United States and many Western countries have been doing things that are not allowed and not legal for a very long time and getting away with it just because they are able to brainwash the sheeple in general by throwing this propaganda 24/7, acting like they're the enlightened ones, going to protect these backward civilizations and, you know, implement democracy and human rights. They have been constantly breaching international law. So leaders of the NATO, leaders of the United States, you're talking about the biggest war criminals, far bigger than Benjamin Netanyahu. Don't forget that. So in terms of allowed, really, if you're talking about conventional, not unconventional, conventional means you can attack anything related to the military of another country. and any operations that are linked to their defense capabilities and locations that they use to attack you. Unconventional means things outside of that, psychological warfare, manipulation, propaganda, infrastructure, and the US and its proxies, meaning NATO, EU states, and Israel, have been always conducting unconventional warfare against states that are not really equal in power. Yet Iran is still acting within international law. And that's something that everyone should look at, really. That's why the G7, who I call the Genocide 7, weren't able to tell Iran that you did something unlawful. So when they said a statement condemning Iran's response to a genocidal entity and attacking their bases, attacking Israel's bases, which provide the hubs of the attacks launched to commit war crimes and genocide against infants and innocent civilians and infrastructure and healthcare facilities and schools and journalists, and the list goes on, they were condemning them. Meaning, they are like Israel, these people. The people in control of these establishments, they are exactly like Israel. Don't get anything mixed up here. And they said it consists an escalation. Well, look at the levels of hypocrisy. It consists in escalation. So when Israel goes and slaughters people in a genocide, over 40, 50,000 people in Gaza, escalating in Lebanon, thousands, and in Syria constantly, and then Iran, and no, nothing. They'll go to the other country. Don't attack them back. Why? Oh, because they're the chosen people. They're the chosen people. Don't attack them. They can do that to you because you're subhuman, but they are the real, race and human, creme de la creme of humanity. So don't attack them, please. But again, this is how things are. And Iran is still conducting their responses based on what they see fit and with the relevant calculations. They don't want an all-out war, but they're pushed to an all-out war. And I hope that elaborates. Let's see what else we have. Sour Vodka saying Irish peacekeepers of UNIFIL outpost UN 652 are standing their ground in the face of IDF advance. Could this cause problems for the diaper force? Well, Israel has a history of attacking UNIFIL bases. In 2006, they targeted them. And in previous years in Lebanon, they killed many UNIFIL troops. They constantly attack UN bases. And again, they get away with it because they are the chosen people. They can get away with it. But anyone who stands in the way from the UNIFIL would cause more problems for Israel and cause them to make more calculations. Because now there are more eyes on them. There is a bit more scrutiny. So it could potentially cause some problems. And they're important. I mean, these moves are very important. However, Israel never showed regard to the United Nations. Israel despises the United Nations. Israel, ridicules international law. And that wouldn't necessarily prevent them from conducting an attack against them. Sherry Vandenberg, did you hear that Israel's renamed savage killing campaigns Operations Armageddon yesterday? I think people misunderstood that because of the translation from Hebrew. Benjamin Netanyahu called it Tkuma. Tkuma in Hebrew is revival, not Armageddon. But some translations translated it as Armageddon. So he means revival in a sense of the revival of Israel. But many people are still criticizing him in Israel that a change of name will not necessarily change the actual war. You know, he wants to give it like a new year, a new war name, so that he can take 1 or 2 more years and not show everyone that we've been waging this, what are they calling it, iron swords or whatever it is, for over a year now and failing miserably internally and externally. But it's not Armageddon. It's the word Tkuma in Hebrew, which means revival. And sour vodka, thank you so much for that. Love the little dog over there. S.A. Max Legend, there is a disturbing growing rise in Arab Zionism in the Gulf Arab states in particular, as they want to normalize quickly with the entity rather than side with the Palestinians. Yes, and that's why we always say it's not a case of religious war or anything of the sort. Israel likes to portray it as such and always, you know, spew venom with other Islamophobes that it's a war, you know, the Muslims are waging it against us, and. Because why? On the Palestinian side, you have people from all walks of life and races and religion. And on the other side, you have people from many walks of life and races and religions. An example of that are the Arab Zionists, the Muslim Zionists, and the Palestinian Zionists. Are there no Palestinian Zionists who believe in similar things that the Zionist movement believes in and protect them who have powerful positions, right? We have that. That's why it's beyond race, it's beyond ethnicity, it's beyond religion. It's a case of people looking for their liberty, a case of equal human rights, a case of justice. And it's not surprising coming from Arab Zionists. What's the surprise? These people helped establish the state of Israel. These people allowed the Zionist terror militias in 1948 to control all of Palestine. Why? Because they promised the previous empire that we will allow a Jewish state at the expense of the Palestinian people. And here's our signature too. So nothing surprising there, but the thing is, you know, with the rise of response coming from Iran and from the resistance fronts, their arguments are getting weaker and weaker, you know. It's more difficult to say, oh, it's a show. It's more difficult for them to, you know, spew their sectarianism, vomit-worthy rhetoric, right? Oh, the Shias and the this and that. Again, you know, they're losing everything, but they'll still resort to racism, you know, the Persians, or sectarianism, or play by the rule book of the Zionists, you know, to cast doubt on anything that Iran and the resistance fronts do. Why? Because someone's doing something and they're sitting there doing nothing, right? So they need to try and attack the people who actually do something, because they're just sitting there not doing anything. And when you don't do anything, when you have a case, a war in front of you, then you are siding with the oppressor. Why? Because you're not saying anything, and that serves the oppressor. And you can have excuses to that. I'm not saying you can't have excuses, but you're free to do that too. But the argument is getting weaker and weaker, you know. Firstly, they used to say Hezbollah, it's all a theater and they're only targeting posts. And even from that time, I used to say, don't underestimate targeting posts. Don't underestimate any participation. Why? Because it is participation. It's lifting off the pressure from Gaza. It's exhausting the genocide army, not allowing them to conduct an even larger genocide in Gaza. And they'll buy the Zionist lies too. Oh, they only target like animals in Israel. They won't show anything, and ignore all of the facts coming from the ground, even when they see it. But what can you do when people are blind? They're blind. Some people are beyond repair, beyond anything. But again, their narrative is becoming weaker and weaker. What can you deny that Iran attacked Israel on the 1st of October? Can anyone deny that? You can't deny that. Jack, your bottom line is Bibi Netanyahu wants to stay out of jail in order to do that. He wants to drag America in this war. Yeah, he wanted to drag America into this war from the beginning. I mean, there were signs that some people in the US administration knew that he wanted to do that. And Biden told him, in April, you got the win, take it, when they intercepted some of the missiles coming from Iran, that we won't participate in an attack. But as time goes by, they start to support him more and more, meaning, don't kid us around. You are the same thing as him, as Benjamin Netanyahu. And if it reaches that final moment, okay, and there's an argument, they haven't fought on behalf, they didn't fight on behalf of Israel yet. So will they, if things get worse, or will they go and attack Iran with them? Which would almost immediately mean like that's it, potentially World War III. Because Israel is promising a heavy strike on Iran. And Iran made it clear we won't tolerate a small strike, like they won't tolerate any strike from Israel. And they said we will respond in a violent manner. So let alone them being attacked by Israel and by the US in a heavy manner. It's going to escalate things further, and it will further raise tensions. Perceived reality, Mahmoud, do you think the Israeli air defense is sustainable once the Zionist air defense is depleted? Israel feel pressure to negotiate? Well, if Israel, firstly, they have good air defense systems, not that they don't. The Iron Dome can be effective in many cases. Arrow and David Sling, they've proven to be less effective, and the Iron Dome had many failures, but they still have some sort of effectiveness, not to the level that Israel portrays them to have, but they have something. Now, with regards to depleted, well, America fills them up. You see, they rely on America to fill it up, on the U.S. administration, and they still give it to them. And if the U.S., that's when it comes to the pressure of negotiations, if the U.S. wanted to apply genuine pressure on Israel to negotiate and reach a peaceful resolution, or at least a ceasefire, then they would have told them, we will stop helping you even with the defense. Because what kind of an excuse is this? And not only that they're supplying them with defense, what they call as defense, even though they don't have a right to defend themselves. Like they constantly say, what do you mean a right to defend myself? You're an occupying apartheid entity. Right to defend yourself from who? From the people you oppress? What kind of right is that? That's why they constantly repeat it and brainwash people. Part of the psychological warfare and propaganda. We have a right to defend ourselves. You don't have a right to defend yourself. The people who have a right to defend themselves are the people who you oppress. By any means necessary, they have a right to defend themselves. But what do? They tell you Israel has a right to defend themselves, and anyone who fights from the other side, they'll call them a terrorist, so you can't say that they don't have a right to defend themselves. Right? But Israel is under no pressure because, the United States is providing them with everything. And so long as they provide them with what they need, they wouldn't feel the pressure to do anything. And Jenny, thank you so much for your super. He said, I'm not an expert. In my opinion, failure and infiltration is on the Iranian part. If you look backward, the present and past assassinations are connected in Iran, Haifa, Italy. Well, listen, the infiltrations, they could happen anywhere, really. And even if they do happen, that does not mean you either delegitimize the state there where this happened, this infiltration happened in. That's assuming it's an infiltration, not AI generated intelligence based on certain movements, for example, and what have you. Because when you talk about the assassination of big whales, you need to have not just like one person sitting there and giving you. It doesn't really work like that. So whether it is or it isn't infiltration, there is something wrong that needs to be, of course, addressed. But again, that doesn't say anything about the genuine position of the country or organization that this has happened within. And usually when you talk about countries or movements with a bigger force or a bigger reach, that means they have bigger challenges. That means they are more open to risk. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. I'll hopefully have another video for you after this live stream. Apologies, of course, if I haven't reached all of your comments. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. However, I do appreciate your input. Thank you everyone who sent supers, much appreciated. Sour Vodka, Dennis Huggins, Stephen Burrows, The Sweeney, and Jenny Camerini. Thank you so much for that. I'll hopefully be with you with another live tomorrow. A video will come after this live stream as well. In the meantime, stay blessed, take care, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.